Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at making a Warlock Bard multi-class. My idea is to make a very charming, deceiving, persuasive type of character and just kind of go all in on that type of idea. We're going to make like a social animal essentially, and we're going to be able to combine that with some decent spellcasting skill and having some decent reliable damage in the form of like Eldritch Blast plus Agonizing Blast. So that's basically going to be the idea here. We're going to be taking the good aspects of Bard, some of the fun aspects of Warlock, and making it into a character. And my idea is to really kind of go all in on this kind of like devilish, beguiling type of persona, which is why we're probably going to go Tiefling. At least I would go Tiefling for this build. Not because it's the strongest choice, but because it just fits the theme. I'm also really liking the Fiend Warlock for this. Again, there's no reason you couldn't take something like Genie, for example, which is another excellent choice. And if you want to do more damage, I feel like the Genie is probably going to be the better bet, actually. You do get things like Spite Growth, which just combines so well with, say, Eldritch Blast, with Repelling Blast, and Grasp of Hadar, for example, right? Even Bottled with Spite is really, really nice, just to add some extra damage to one of our attacks, right? But I really do like the idea of just being this like tiefling devil type who uses their charming and deceiving ways to get what they want. So that's going to be my assumption going forward, that we're probably going to be going with Pact of the Fiend. Not because it's the strongest, although Pact of the Fiend is a very, very solid subclass still. It definitely is held up, even though it's one of the originals of the Player's Handbook. But it just fits so well. And like I said, how could you go wrong with Tiefling? Although, to be fair, if you have some of the options available from the Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, I think that's what it's called, whatever it is, then I might go with some of the Tiefling subclasses there, find something that doesn't have +1 to intelligence and instead gives us like Dex or Con or whatever else we might want, right? Dex especially. But anyways, so that's going to be the basic idea. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time recapping all the abilities because these are both subclasses from the original Player's Handbook. But just to quickly, sum up everything, Warlock's going to give us Dark One's Blessing, so we get temporary hit points whenever we kill something. Dark One's Own Luck at level 6, so we can boost our saving throw, very, very nice ability. Fiendish Resilience at level 10, giving us resistance to 1 damage type that we can actually change out when we finish a long rest. Very, very nice. Especially if we have an idea what's coming up. Like, sometimes you just know you're going into the Arctic wilderness and maybe we need cold resistance. Or we're going into the 9 hells and maybe I want fire resistance. Or hey, maybe we're just fighting a bunch of stuff with giant freaking swords and I want slashing. Either way, being able to plan in advance is great. And of course, Hurl Through Hell, which is an amazing ability, good damage, nice crowd control, no saving throw. Yes, it's only 1 round of crowd control, but no saving throw. Honestly, this is probably going to be our capstone ability, since my idea for the build would be like 6 levels of our Lore Bard with our 14 levels of Warlock. But, even in that light, Hurl Through Hell is probably better than half the capstone abilities in the game, so I feel like we're doing okay there. Anyways, obviously the Bard is going to give us some more skills. It's going to give us expertise, Jack of all trades. Lore Bard specifically is going to give us Cutting Words, Counter Charm, and Magical Secrets at level 6, which is very, very nice because usually if I play a Lore Bard, I almost feel obligated to grab Counterspell as one of my level 3 Magical Secrets. But Counterspell is actually on the Warlock spell list, and we're going to have enough Warlock levels that we can actually get Counterspell from Warlock. Meaning that I can actually pick 2 things from any list I want, and Counterspell doesn't have to be one of them. It feels like kind of like a small blessing there. Anyways, the other nice thing about having the Bard levels is, especially since we kind of want to go more into spell casting, yes, this is going to make us more of a low-level spellcaster, right? We're going to have a bunch of low-level spells from Bard and spell slots, and then we're going to have our spell slots from Warlock, which of course, sadly, don't stack with the Bard ones. But those are going to tend to be more low levels as well, right? after level 5, we stopped gaining Warlock spell slots, and then after that, we started getting our Eldritch Invocations, which is one choice from that level 6, 7, 8, or 9 list, whichever one we're gaining, right? So I find that even at higher levels, Warlock spellcasting tends to be a little more restricted, focusing more on those level 4 and 5 spells that we have available, and then in the right circumstances, breaking out that like big 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th level spell that we have, the one and only choice we had, right? So this is just going to give us more low level spellcasting. Now we have more spell slots available. We don't have to worry about a bunch of these spell slots automatically scaling. We could cast some of those with our Bard spell slots instead. It just gives us a lot more flexibility, even though they don't stack. So another aspect of the build is going to be which pact do we choose. And I don't mean like which patron. I mean like pact of the tome or pact of the chain would be the two big ones that I'd be looking at. We're not looking to make a weapons character. And while Talisman is definitely interesting, it's really not fitting the theme of what we're trying to do here, which is basically be a charming, deceiving guy with a bit more spell casting than your average Warlock. So, you know, Tome and Chain seem to be the two obvious fits there. So Tome will give us more spell casting. Obviously, we're going to have to take the Book of Ancient Secrets invocation, but, you know, it's a great invocation, so who cares? That's not like it's a huge burden for us to grab that. If we're going Tome, that's probably why we wanted it anyways. And that will give us a lot more spellcasting options. However, the one I prefer is Pact of the Chain. And the reason is because if I'm playing a Tiefling who is also a Fiend patron, Warlock, and I'm taking a bunch of stuff from Lorebard, I'm trying to be this devilish, charming, deceiving, persuasive guy, don't I want an imp sidekick? I mean, how can I say no to that? It just fits too well. So, Investment of the Chainmaster is basically, well, it's basically the Book of Ancient Secrets for Pact of the Chain. It is almost required, right? It's just too good. One problem we often have with our familiars, even as a Warlock, is that our familiars are incredibly fragile and take nothing to kill. Basically, they get hit, they get killed. But now, you can actually use your reaction to give them resistance to an incoming damage type. Which isn't bad. I don't want to make it sound like that's great, because the truth is that even if we have, say, an imp, which has 10 hit points, that's the most of any of them, even if you give them resistance, it's not that hard for something to do 22 points of damage to them in one hit, especially as we get to higher and higher levels. So it's not like it makes your fiend, or makes your familiar just like invincible or something. But it does make it a lot more useful. It can attack using a bonus action. If it has, say, a poison stinger or some other type of attack like that you know, uses its spell save DC, you can substitute yours instead. And let's face it, yours is probably going to be a lot higher than your familiar's. So that is just an absolute win there. Just in general, though, it's a great invocation. There's absolutely no reason not to take it if you went with the Pact of the Chain. Gift of the Everlasting Ones is also pretty decent, but I would definitely prioritize it way behind the Investment. It's not even in the same class. But we will have some healing magic from Bard, so being able to share that with our familiar is still good, right? I don't mind that at all. I guess I'll go into a rant about Chains of Carceri, even though technically we'll never get it, because we need 15 levels of Warlock to even have that as an option, and even if we get to level 20 with this build, we're only going to have 14 Warlock. But just in case you decide to deviate a little or didn't care about those magical secrets, you know, we'll talk about it a bit. Because this is one where I've really had to do a 180-degree turnaround. I remember first reading it and thinking like, okay, Hold Monster is a great spell, but we're limited to only like 3 different creature types. I just don't know how useful that'll be. Then I DM'd a campaign that went all the way from 1 to 20 with a Warlock who went Pact of the Chain and took this invocation. And maybe it's because the campaign I ran just had a bunch of elementals and fiends at higher levels. Maybe that's what happened. But this ability was an absolute game changer. I went from thinking like, cool, but really situational, probably not worth it, to being like, why would you not take this if you're already 15 levels into Warlock and you went Pact of the Chain? Just take it. even with magic resistance, I couldn't believe how often creatures would just fail their saving throws. I mean, it probably helped that he had, I think, a +3 Rod of the Pact Keeper at this point, because we were talking like 17th, 18th level by the time this was all rolling together, right? And they're fighting a bunch of like demons and devils and stuff fairly constantly at this level. So he has a +3 Rod of the Pact Keeper, and I think he had a Tome of Leadership and Influence, or whatever the Charisma book is that raises your Charisma by 2 and your cap. So he's 22 Charisma. I think his spell save DC was like 23, 24, 25, somewhere in that territory. It was ridiculous. And so even with magic resistance, half these things could just never make the saving throws. It was ridiculous. Obviously, if they had legendary resist, that's a different area, but either way, that was a long rant about an ability that we can't even take if we follow the build as directed. But, whenever I think about this ability, I always remember that, oh yeah, that thing turned out to be awesome, and I was pretty on the fence about it. Anyways, as far as like more general invocations to take, obviously, we're going to be relying on Eldritch Blast a lot. We're not using a weapon really in this build. So Agonizing Blast and Repelling Blast are going to be staples of pretty much any one of these types of builds, right? You might also want to grab things like Eldritch Spear, Lance of Lethargy, Grasp of Hadar, etc. If you really want to go in on that forced movement, pushing and pulling type of stuff, which, by the way, is pretty awesome. So, I'm not saying no to any of that either. I'm just saying that usually, of all the forced movements, Repelling tends to be the best. Unlike Grasp of Hadar, which can only be used once per turn, you can push things back multiple times with multiple rays of your Eldritch Blast. So it just tends to be better. But nothing wrong with grabbing more. Devil's Sight. This is one that, even if I'm not trying to use Darkness Devil's Sight, it just kind of fits the build so well that I really just kind of want to recommend it. Do we need it? No, not really. But, it just fits. Anyways, One with Shadows also fits. And if you're in a campaign where you might be able to use this to get, like, say, surprise on the first round, definitely worthwhile. Eldritch Mind. Now, personally, I don't plan on standing close enough to things to get hit a lot to require concentration saves. But, on the other hand, I really, really hate failing concentration saves in general. And I hate it even more on Warlocks, where I have so few spell slots. It really sucks when you have like 2 spell slots, you cast a concentration spell, then get hit and lose concentration, and that's half your spell slots just, gone in an instant. Now, it won't be quite as bad as this build, because we will have some Bard spell slots as well, but even still, same general principle applies. If I'm worried about concentration, this is a pretty good way to do it. Advantage normal concentration saves. The last one is Beguiling Influence. And personally, I wouldn't take Beguiling Influence. Not because it doesn't fit the theme here. So for those of you who are too lazy to look it up or don't remember, it basically gives you proficiency with the Persuasion and Deception skills, right? But I would rather just grab Persuasion and Deception, I think. And the reason is because Lord Bard is going to give us a lot of skills options already. But our invocations are a lot more rare and a lot more valuable, in my opinion, right? So I would probably rather just grab Persuasion and Deception as actual skills rather than use an invocation on them. But, this option is still available. Feel free to do it either way you want. Let's see, we already went through it. Bard is going to give us... Oh, I should mention that this build does give us a bit more AoE damage potential than most traditional Warlocks as well. Like, we do get things like Burning Hands at level 1, Scorching Ray is a level 2 spell for us. We can grab Fireball level 3, while Fire at level 4. Our level 5 options aren't that great, to be honest, for damage at least. These are ones that I might want to switch out, though. Like, Burning Hands is a really good first level spell. It does a good chunk of damage with a nice area effect. There's not a lot of really good competing spells actually at level 1, but it's not so good by the time I'm 5th or 6th level, especially if I'm going to be potentially casting Fireball with that spell slot instead. I'd just rather have that. So it is one that I might take and then switch out, right? As for feat choices, One thing is, for this type of build, it's not a weapon build, right? So we're not like if I was playing like a ranged user, I'm almost compelled to take sharpshooter as a feat. Like, it's really hard not to, especially if you're playing any sort of like fighter or ranger or anybody with extra attack, right? Maybe not on a rogue so much, unless I have a way of like, making sure I'm going to still hit and get my sneak attack damage in, maybe with the aim ability, for example, right? But especially like fighters, for example, the ability to stack those damage one hit after another, and then potentially action surge and do it all over again. Sharpshooters is just too good to pass up, Maybe I want something like crossbow expert. If I'm playing a melee build, I might want, say, great weapon master or polearm master or both or sentinel or whatever, right? There's so many things that, depending on the weapon style I've chosen, I kind of want to take things that are going to fit the weapon style. But we're not using weapons in here. We're just using a lot of Eldritch Blasts and some nice spells. In which case, suddenly my feat choices look a lot more open. So, what might I want to take? Well, I really like options that are going to give me the charisma boosts, right? So, let's say we're able to take things like Fate Touch, Shadow Touch, Telepathic, Telekinetic, all pretty decent choices, all giving us that +1 to charisma if we had an odd charisma to start with. Pretty nice. Other options, though, of course, we've got some good general feats like Alert and Lucky, both of which are great. Alert is one I really like if I'm going to be planning on casting a lot of crowd control spells. So if I wanted to take, say, Hypnotic Pattern or something, right, which is available on both the Bard and the Warlock spell list, so there's a good chance I might have it, then, I might want to be able to hit something before they all have a chance to move and charge my party and get all mixed in with the Barbarian and the, whoever else we got up front there, I might value that a lot more. Maybe I don't need Alert, though, in which case, I might look towards things like Lucky more. Another great one, though, is Inspiring Leader. And the main reason is because if I have a familiar and his hit points are garbage, which they are, we've already discussed that, then giving him a whole bunch of temporary hit points could actually help him to survive a lot better and to get a lot more out of him. Especially because, unlike a lot of familiars, I might be using this familiar to attack. Like, if I took, an Emperor Quasit or whatever it is, they've got some actually decent attacks. The problem is that they normally can't ever land them because their spell save DC is so low. But as we've already discussed, if they're using my spell save DC, there's a really good chance that they could actually be effective in combat. And, I don't need to necessarily be using Hex all the time on this build. I could be having my Imp, attack with a Poison Stinger or my Quasit or whatever other, Pseudo Dragon, whatever it was I chose, right? They could be doing something cool, but if they're up front, they're in danger a lot more. So giving them a lot of temporary hit points is actually a really, really good plan. And, I can also get everybody else in my party, including myself as well. So never a bad choice. And we're going to have max charisma, obviously, on this build. I mean, it's a charisma build. We're not competing with any other stats, really. So that's just a really solid choice there as well. Overall, this is a build I think has a lot of potential for not just like cool, like some neat combat tricks, with some forced movement and stuff like that, some crowd control, potentially some nice summon spells as well. We've got a familiar that can be helping us out. So it's actually a pretty decent combat build. I'm not going to say that it's like a super high damage build, because it's really not. You're relying on Eldritch Blast and Agonizing Blast a lot. And while they're not terrible for damage, they're not the best either, right? Like, let's be honest, But it also has just so much cool roleplay potential. I love these kind of like more social characters where I'm able to maybe charm people, but not with a charm spell, but I mean just by persuading them and influencing people and lying to them and stuff. Those kind of characters are just a lot of fun to play. And especially in a more social campaign, this kind of character is just a blast. I've never played this specific combination, but I have played these types of characters before, and I've always enjoyed them. I mean, maybe it's because I really enjoy the roleplay aspects of the game a lot anyways, and, when you're playing that charisma guy, you're not just kind of sitting there in the back thinking I suck at talking to people because I'm a barbarian. Arr, you know, I need to smash something with my great axe because I'm good at that. Talking, not so much. But you know, like these kind of characters, you really get to shine with that kind of stuff. And so I just think that they're a lot of fun. But anyways, that's going to be my thoughts on this particular type of character, on this specific build at least. Like I said, I really like the idea that you can still contribute in combat with a lot of neat abilities and some decent spells and, you know, some forced movement if your party's able to take advantage of that, or even if you're able to, using things like, say, you know, Wall of Fire, which is on your spell list, pushing and pulling things through the fire, you know, nothing wrong with that. And then, of course, just being able to also be that charming, deceiving type of, you know, roleplay type of character. And, you know, you can even be fairly decently stealthy because there's no reason you couldn't have used one of your skill proficiencies on stealth, or at least jack of all trades on stealth. And you could, you know, still be decent in that area too. Sure, you're not going to beat a rogue or anything like that, but you can be all right, you know. So, you know, those are my thoughts on this particular build. Our next video is probably going to be the wizard one, where we're going to be taking a look at the wizard multiclassing options. And of course, just to be clear for people who didn't understand the format, even though we're like, you know, almost a dozen videos in now, the main idea is whatever the class is, that's going to be like the main class, and we're looking to dip, you know, different options and see how good they are, right? So I know, I probably wasn't as clear on that as I should have been from the get-go, because I've had people asking in comment sections before, like, why not just take more levels of this and more levels of that? It's like, we did in that class's video, so I probably should have explained that a little better from the start, but that's okay. I'm sure most people have caught on by now. Anyways, so next one's probably going to be the wizard video, and that is finally going to wrap up. Oh, I just spit at my camera. That's great. That's staying in, though. Once again, I like to be transparent with my many errors and mistakes. I think it humanizes me a little. Who knows if it does or not? But that's my opinion on it. Anyways, so yeah, that's going to finally wrap up the multi-classing tier list series that we've been working on for a long time. To be fair, we could have just like pounded it through all the way just by doing every video one of those. But I kind of like the format we've been doing here, you know, where we look at a class, and we look at some of the subclasses we haven't looked at, and maybe we do a multi-classing build, and then we move on to the next one. I think it's had a nice pace to it. But who knows, maybe I'm completely wrong about that. Whatever. Either way, though, it's, you know, it's almost done, so too late to go back in time and change it all now. Anyways, that's everything. Thank you for watching. As always, feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and most importantly, leave me your comments in the comments section. And also, we will be getting a microphone soon. I still haven't gotten paid yet, right? So everybody's clear on that, I hope, from the last video. Like, I'm finally getting some money from YouTube. We'll use that money to buy a microphone and have better quality sound. Although I think the sound lately has been a little better. I've like played around with, you know, positioning and stuff a little more. So hopefully it's not as bad as it was in like some of the more early days, but it can always be better, which is, you know, why we're getting a mic. But anyways, that is everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.